For more on the growing concern over the safety of Chinese products, I spoke with consumer advocate and former presidential candidate Ralph Nader. You've heard the reports coming from Massachusetts, from Utah here. If you're a consumer, you're going to the supermarket and you want to buy a tube of toothpaste, what should you look for? What do you need to know?
You look for the company that produces it, and the closer the food is produced to where you consume it, the more you're going to be able to rely on it, especially since these producers, these farmer-to-market producers, are going to have to face up directly. They're not 7, 8, 10,000 miles away. The goods are flooding in from China, and a lot of them are coming from tremendously contaminated and toxified areas in the eastern part of China. Farm-fed fish, for example, lead-contaminated toys. You've got tires, up to 1 million tires are defective in terms of tread separation on the highways. So it's got to be President Bush. He's got to start paying attention, defending Americans here at home, not being bogged down in the quagmire in Iraq. That's one of the prices of the Iraq War. And Congress has got to beef up the inspections and the budgets of the Food and Drug Administration. You know, the Food and Drug Administration's budget is 1/3 of an aircraft carrier. So 1/3, it's $1.5 billion to defend 300 million American consumers and all the food and all the drugs produced here and pouring in from abroad. So we've got to become more community self-reliant in our country. We've got to produce more of what we consume so we can keep an eye out on it.
If you're in the supermarket,
yes,
do you need to look at a product and see does it have to be China-free? Are you looking for specific ingredients here? What do consumers need to do?
I'm looking for the enforcement of the 2002 country of origin law that Congress passed, but was obstructed by these big, giant U.S. food processors that are bringing in all kinds of additives and all kinds of food, from apple juice to sweeteners from China. We've got a law on the books that's not being enforced for fruits and vegetables, so people can go into the supermarket and see the country of origin. It's been on the books for 5 years. Neither President Bush nor the members of Congress, with a very few exceptions, are saying, let's enforce it.
Are there any products that can be trusted for China? Can China be trusted to put out safe products, do you feel?
Well, certainly the ones that aren't vulnerable to environmental poisons and contamination that, by the Chinese government's own admission, is swarming all over China. That means textiles, hardware, electronics, things like that, and with lead-based coatings, and that's not safe for children. But when it comes to things you drink, things you eat, things you take in terms of medicines, all kinds of additives, watch out. The safeguards are not there. No matter what the Chinese say, no matter what the bureaucrats in Washington say, you've got to all yell out to the Congress where the change can start. Start yelling out to your senators and representatives and demand that the country of origin labeling is on those products in your supermarket.
And how do you respond to those consumers who say, look, we can't afford some of these American-made products here? Obviously, the China products are much cheaper.
Well, in some cases they're cheaper, but they're also more hazardous, and in other cases they're not cheaper. For example, for $1.50 a day, workers in Vietnam and Indonesia are building these Nike shoes. You see a real cheap Nike shoe around? What happens is they import these cheaply produced products, but the importers and the retailers are making huge profits and soaking up that difference. They're not passing it on to the consumer in all too many instances. Besides, can't we produce our own apple juice? 80% of toys are coming in from China. Huge imports of apple juice coming in from China. If you saw where those apples are grown, there's tremendous air and water pollution, chemical residues, contamination, illegal pesticides by U.S. standards. It's only going to get worse unless we wake up, yell at Congress, demand the law be enforced, beef up the customs inspectors. I don't think 1% of the imports in this country are being inspected by the U.S. government. That's a disgrace. Far too much money is going into more and more mass weapon systems. We don't need that kind of huge weapon systems, with no more Soviet Union. We need to defend the health and safety of the American people here at home.
Mr. Nader, thank you so much for your views here on the Situation Room.
You're welcome.